Trap is pretty good, but there's a few elements that sort of just left me baffled while I was watching it. Trap is directed by M. Night Shyamalan, who's a filmmaker whose movies I will never miss, because even if his movies are bad or good, they are still incredibly entertaining. He has possibly the widest range of any filmmaker I've ever seen, because he can go from making genuinely masterpiece level movies such as Signs, Unbreakable, and The Sixth Sense, and he can still manage to make movies that are legitimately horrible, such as Lady in the Water, The Happening, and The Last Airbender.
Name is Ang, and I'm the Avatar.
Something you cannot say about any one of his movies is that they're boring, and that is the same thing that you cannot say about Trap. Because Trap is incredibly engaging from start to finish, and I found myself on the edge of my seat the entire time. Well, that is until the third act, but we'll get to that. So the plot of this movie is Josh Hartnett plays a firefighter that takes his daughter to a concert for Lady Raven, who is essentially supposed to be like Taylor Swift, and he takes his daughter to this concert, but we learn pretty early on that he's actually a serial killer, and this whole concert is actually just a trap for law enforcement to catch him as he's leaving. And so this becomes a very captivating thriller because you want this character to succeed. Even though he's a serial killer, you see that he's a very loving father who genuinely cares about his daughter and just wants to protect her. So for that reason, you start to think maybe he's not really a serial killer. Maybe it's all just a joke. But as the movie progresses, you learn it's not a joke. He's done some stuff. I will say, though, that something about this movie that I wasn't really a big fan of was that it was immediately revealed that the Josh Hartnett character was the serial killer, or the Butcher, as they call him. I would have preferred it if, as the movie progresses into the first and into the second act, that it becomes more and more obvious that he is the Butcher that they're looking for, by the way that he reacts when people bring up the Butcher, as he has maybe a guilty expression on his face, or he's trying to hide his guilty expression, or maybe just by the way that he's constantly trying to escape his chair, it becomes more and more obvious that he is the Butcher that they're looking for. I just thought that that might have been much more compelling than just immediately having the audience know, yeah, this guy's a serial killer. Another element of this movie that I wasn't really crazy about was intermittently throughout the first two acts, the Josh Hartnett character will be confronted by another character, and it just didn't really make a lot of sense. Also because this doesn't really have any impact at all on the narrative. She just shows up and confronts him about the ongoings with his daughter and her daughter, and it's never really resolved. It doesn't really feel like it has much purpose in the movie, and it just, honestly, just felt like it slowed down the entire pacing of everything to me. Now, I say that one of the standout elements being positive in this movie was Josh Hartnett's performance. I thought that he did a very good job of balancing the kind of goofy dad trying to fit in with like the new generation, as well as being a very dark and twisted character, because there'd be moments where he would switch into his other self, and there's moments in the film where it kind of suggests that perhaps this is his true self, and the kind of goofy dad persona is just a mask that he puts on when he's in society. And I thought that that was a very interesting way to look at it. The cinematography was also very strong for the most part in this movie, and there's a lot of trademark Shyamalan shots that were present here. Something that Shyamalan really likes to do, especially in his early movies, is to constantly just pan with the motion and not do a lot of various cuts throughout the scene, but rather just pan with the motion of it and just kind of do like a long take. And he does that a lot in Unbreakable, he did that a lot in Sixth Sense, and he does that a lot in this movie as well, where there's a lot of scenes where the characters will just be talking and the camera will pan back and forth. And this gives the impression to the audience that you're kind of in the scene, and I felt that it was very impactful in that way. But a cinematography choice in this movie that just kind of fell flat for me was that there's many moments where the characters will be essentially talking to the camera, and this kind of style of filmmaking doesn't really work for like a thriller to me. When I see this, I more so think of like a comedy, like a Wes Anderson type thing. It doesn't really work in like a thriller like this. And also, it's really awkward in like the framing that they did, because it was like really up close and it just felt awkward. I feel like what M. Night was trying to do was he was trying to make it feel like these characters were impeding their personal space, but it just felt very awkward and uncomfortable for me and just took me out of it. So now to talk about the element of this movie that I disliked the most, and that is the third act. The third act of this movie was really bad. Because the thing about this movie in the third act is that it just betrays what it's trying to do. Because the whole thing about this movie is that up to this point, it was fairly grounded in reality. I mean, sure, there were elements of this movie that felt kind of unrealistic up to that point, but it still felt like, okay, this could happen. But there's so many elements in the third act where I was just rolling my eyes like, okay, this could literally never happen. For example, they finally catch the Josh Hartnett character, and he's in his house, and the SWAT team are like surrounding his house, and he somehow escapes the house because there's like a ladder underneath. They never explain this. And then he also later on is driving the SWAT car that Lady Raven is in, and they also never explain this. And then the SWAT team shows up and they shoot him, but he also was not there because then they show him in the crowd watching it. What? Like, it just doesn't make any sense because I'm watching this and I'm thinking, did he like gain superpowers or something? Like, when did this happen? Like, they never explained any of this. And then later on, like towards the very end of the movie, he is hit with a taser, and instead of, you know, like a normal person immediately going down, he attacks the police officer and seemingly like is about to rip his eyes out, and he's attacked with another taser and he still doesn't go down. And I'm thinking, okay, so he's clearly like, he has super strength or something. But no, he apparently is like a normal guy, and he's just super strong, apparently, is what's happening. So yeah, and then at the very end of the movie, he's finally captured. It's over. Just kidding. It's not over. It's not over, because what happens is that he's caught, and then they show him undoing his handcuffs. So he's actually not caught. They're actually going to do this entire thing over again. Yeah, it's just really stupid, because you go from being like, this whole thing is grounded in reality, and he's going to get caught because he's made a few mistakes, and he's obviously going to pay for that. But then they just keep like undoing it, being like, no, he's gonna get away, to the point where I'm like, okay, he's obviously gonna be fine, like nothing's going to happen to him. And I was just rolling my eyes the entire time, because just the absurdity of it was just comical to me. So in conclusion, I greatly enjoyed Trap. It's a movie that I will definitely revisit, and I had a lot of fun with it. It was just the third act of this movie definitely ruined it. Up to that point, I'd say it was probably like a B movie, but the third act definitely brought it down to a C. So for that reason, I'll give Trap a C-.